Shalom, everybody, and welcome back to Breslov Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat Terumah, which is now this year, it's the first Shabbat in Adar. It's very exciting. We're getting closer and closer. And as has been mentioned many times in Breslov teachings, Purim is very, very big. Rabbi Nachman calls Purim the beginning. It's mamash the beginning. It's an opening to start again and to have breakthroughs through Purim Bezrat Hashem. Even this type of talk we say throughout the year, but this is especially true in Purim. Rav Nosson says in his beautiful prayer that he wrote to be said as a preparation for and during Purim. It's prayer 37, part 2 of Rav Nosson's prayers, Likutey Tfilot. Highly recommended to say it. He says there we should be zochet to mitbonen, to delve in the depth of the beauty of the miracle of the Purim story. When hearing the Megillah and learning about the Megillat Esther, to probe into the depths of how far-reaching is the message of Purim. Because don't forget, it's called Megillat Esther, which can also be translated as Legalot. Megillah means to reveal. Esther, the secrets of creation, the secrets of the Torah are hidden in Megillat Esther. And the goal of Megillat Esther, and it's so important that even in halacha, everyone has to hear it. Man, woman, children, everybody has to hear the Megillah. Okay? It's because it's revealing the deepest secrets of creation hidden in the Purim story, B'ezrat Hashem. And we take this opportunity to tell people, to remind people, get into the habit before Purim of saying Rav Nosson's beautiful prayer, of davening in your own words and your bodhidu to be zochet to the light of Mordechai and Esther, the light and the simcha of Purim, and to subdue the evil force and the impurity of Haman Amalek, who's this impure force who's responsible for making our lives miserable and down and making us feel that we're at fault, we're the problem, and we're hopeless. Chas v'shalom. All that comes from Haman Amalek. So a lot of davening will determine how much your Purim is experienced and activates whatever is needed for you in your life, Bezrat Hashem. With that intro, we'd like to go into the Parsha of the week, Parshat Terumah. Something very interesting regarding the menorah. Okay? So we're going to go into two verses, and Rashi, and the Maharal of Prague, his commentary, Gur Aryeh, on Rashi, and from there we'll develop to see how it's developed by Rav Nosson and Rabbi Nachman. So the last verse from the Parsha of the menorah, and there's 6 Parsha. So this is chapter 25, the last verse, verse 40. So Hashem tells Moshe at the end, Ur'eh va'aseh, and see and do betavnitam, in their shapes, asherata mor'eh bahar, like you were shown on the Mount Sinai, the mountain. So Rashi points out, Ur'eh va'aseh, and see and do. Why does it say this statement here by the menorah and doesn't say this by the other artifacts of the tabernacle, not by the aron, not by the shulchan, not by the mizbeach, not by the outer altar, by anything else? It only about the tzitz. It only says here by the menorah, ur'eh, and see and do based on what you've seen. So Rashi writes, Re'eh kan bahar tavnit shani mar'otcha. See here in the mountain the shape of the menorah that I'm showing you. Magid, it comes to show us this like additional information. Shenitkasha Moshe b'maaseh menorah, that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in the maaseh, the making of the menorah. Ad shir'a lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu menorah shelesh, until Hashem had to show him an image of a menorah of fire. So the commentaries explain, how does Rashi know this? So take a look at the opening verse of the Parsha of the menorah. This is now chapter 25, verse 31. So it says, Va'asita menorat zahav tahor, miksha te'aseh menorah. So you should make a menorah, a candelabra of pure gold, miksha, from one solid gold piece, not like little pieces and then you smelt them, heat them up to connect them together. You heat the gold and connect them. No, it has to be one giant mass, and with the kurnas, with the hammer and the chisel, you have to chisel out the menorah from one solid block of gold. Okay? So the word miksha, on one hand, means like it's translated as one solid mass, but also the commentary is saying that what Rashi is saying is derived from this word miksha, that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty, because the word miksha also means kasher, something that's hard. Moshe had difficulty in understanding the menorah. The Gemara, this is Menachot, page 29, which was recently the Daf Yomi for those who do Daf Yomi. The Gemara says there that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in 3, some say 4 items. Number 1, the menorah. He had difficulty in the Maseh menorah. Number 2, the laws of shkatzim, insects and forbidden tiny bugs and creatures and creepy crawlies. Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in that. And number 3, the chidush halevana, the renewing of the moon. Moshe Rabbeinu also had difficulty in that. And some say the laws of shchita, ritual slaughter. So the Maharal goes into this Gemara. It's also like a sub-commentary on Rashi, but what was difficult by each one of these 3? We'll try to go into the 4th one also, but mainly these 3. Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in prophecy. Because again, everything Moshe Rabbeinu is revealing, getting revealed to him, and then revealing to Am Yisrael, is through what's called nevuah, prophecy. The idea of the menorah, the Maharal writes in his commentary Gurayeh, the idea of the menorah is bringing a light which is above prophecy. It's the infinite light. It's shining from a high place, and to bring that into a utensil that will physically shine that light. So that was a level beyond Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy. That's why difficulty in it, and that's why he needed Hashem to come down and assist him in making an image. How could it be something physical that will contain such a high light, which is above prophecy? Okay, so it's going to the mitziut. This is the wording of the Maharal of Prague, and above the mitziut. This light of the menorah is called above existence, shining into existence. For Moshe Rabbeinu, that was difficult because prophecy involves using what's within existence and from that giving over to the Jewish people. That's prophecy. Number 2, shkatzim, worms, creepy crawlies, the laws of worms, tolaim and shkatzim and remasim. There's halachic laws of what's permissible and forbidden to eat. And also, the laws of worms and stuff that grow in fruit, that come from outside and go into the fruit. And the creepy crawlies is like a disgusting domain. People are not so pleased about that area. And it's considered, the Maharal says, beyond mitziut. Below the mitziut. Below existence. Because they're like, why were they created? Why are they necessary? They're just a pain. There's spiders and flies and worms. It's a problem. It's a hassle. And yet there's halachot regarding them. So Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in that area because it's what's beyond, underneath what's considered valid existence. Like, for example, animals, they're close to human beings. Dogs, cats, cows, camels. There's some connection. But the shkatzim and ramasim, they're considered very far and very low, that not pleasant, and have a wanting on a person to want to investigate the laws and ramifications in that area. I just want to do away with it altogether. And yet there's laws. And for Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty because it was a level below mitziut existence, and he needed Hashem's assistance to understand that, because for him that again that's below the level of prophecy. And then there's the renewing of the moon, the laws of the new moon, the halachic laws that the new moon renews itself every month, and you have to the renewing has to look in a certain way. What's the difficulty here is that it's now creating something new in existence. Normally, in creation, everything is a continuity, but that the rabbis and the Torah calls the renewing of the month of the moon chidush halevana, which means new. It's like a new beginning, and not a continuity. It's something new. So prophecy involved in something which is not a continuity, something which is new, that also in a sense it was difficult to Moshe Rabbeinu because it's beyond prophecy. Because prophecy involves creation, which has a continuity to it. And here it's something which is totally brand new. It's not connected to the previous month. It's something that the Beit Din, they have to see the month, they have to see the moon like this. Hashem had to show Moshe Rabbeinu, and it looks like this. Then the sages in the Sanhedrin, the Beit Din, they say Mekudash. It's something brand new. Okay? So these are the 3 areas that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in. That's how the Maharal explains it. Shchita, we won't go into that much, but the idea of shchita is now taking something which is from existence, mitziut, and then by slaughtering it, the animal, letting it go into an area which is beyond existence, outside of existence. That also was difficult to Moshe Rabbeinu because prophecy is within existence. Now the laws of shchita, which involves killing an animal, slaughtering an animal, and then thereby it ceases to exist on a physical level. That itself was difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu. There's laws how to do it. When a person dies, it's something else. It's part of the system. But here, going out of your way to slaughter an animal for eating, so now the animal doesn't move anymore. That for Moshe Rabbeinu was difficult, believe it or not, and that's also why he needed a boost in that area. Let us focus on these three. So, let's take a look at these three levels based on the Likutey Moharan lesson 24. In lesson 24, Rabbi Nachman talks about doing the impossible, which is what? Perceiving the infinite light while in a physical existence. This exactly was the menorah. The menorah is a physical candelabra, and yet it was within its possibility, its power, that when the Kohen would light the candles in the candelabra, these candles would shine infinite light into this world. That was crazy. That was what was difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu to grasp. How can something do that? And yet that was the mission of the menorah. Okay, the 7 branches correspond to the 7 attributes of life that a person has to work on. A person has to sanctify himself in 7 areas. They're all related to the 7 lower sfirot: Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. Each one has a corresponding attribute that a person has to work on. For its anger, haughtiness, humility, sexual purity, self-control, restraint, joy, sadness, whatever. All these things are rooted in what's called the 7 midot, and they're reflected in the 7 branches of the candelabra, reflected in the 7 days of the week. And the idea that the Kohen lit every day the candelabra, morning and afternoon, so that it was lit almost 24 hours a day, was in order to sustain the world with the light of the infinite light, which is beyond grasp, beyond this world. So Moshe Rabbeinu had a difficulty, and how can it be that a physical menorah can do that? That's why he needed Hashem to show him that. Why Moshe Rabbeinu had a difficulty? Because this itself is difficult. It's Rabbi Nachman says it's impossible for a physical finite existence to perceive something which is infinite. That's why it was so difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu. How could something physical be able to serve as a vessel for something which is beyond the physical reality, the realm, the infinite light? And yet that's what the menorah was meant to do. So Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in grasping that, showing that even the greatest tzaddikim can't grasp this. Like Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Ki lo yirani adam v'chai. Man can't see me and live. It's two opposites. And yet, the light of the menorah is meant to access and shine that infinite light into the world. That's what the menorah did. The menorah brought such simcha, because the verse reads, Shemen uktoret yesamach lev. Shemen, the oil of the menorah, and the ktoret, the incense, would bring joy to the heart of the creation, which is the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and also the heart of every Jew. It brought simcha. Why? Because it shone a presence of Hashem's light into this world with two opposites. So that was what was so difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu, the shining of the light of the menorah. Number 2 is the idea of the shkatzim. Shkatzim, like we said, like the Maharal explained, is a domain which is below, outside of Mitziut, outside of existence. It doesn't deserve to be called the area of worms and slimy insects which are disgusting and because that's where do they grow? In rotten fruit, things which are rotten, things which are not pure and ripe and clean. So that's where the domain of shkatzim and ramasim and tolaim, that's where they are. That's where worms hang out, and flies and bugs and insects and things which are not pure. When you have a dead carcass, that's where all the flies come, right? Something which is like smells bad, flies come, disgusting, okay? You have the flies also in excrement, all these things which are okay? So that refers to people who can fall so low. People who their deeds lead them to be out of existence. People who lose the term of being a human being from their deeds. They fall so very low. And yet, Rabbi Nachman teaches that it's dafka, specifically from so very low, that a person can wake up and come back to Hashem. So even for Moshe Rabbeinu, that was difficult. Because it's beyond grasp that someone who could be so far out of the limit already, he passed the limit. And yet, even from someone out of the limit, there's hope for him to come back. Even for Moshe Rabbeinu, who represents the greatest of tzaddikim, it's difficult. It's difficult to accept someone who, because of their deeds, they enter the domain of being a sheretz, a shegitz. It's like sometimes religious people, they call sekerdus, shegitz, like shegitz means shegitz like shekets, from these insects and bugs and everything. That's where it comes from. And that term refers to people who are so low. And yet, there's halachot for them. Moshe Rabbeinu had to be taught by Hashem the laws because it's beyond prophecy. His prophecy doesn't work for people who are so low. There's a limit where the nevuah needs. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give up, but he needed Hashem's assistance to guide him for the laws of shkatzim, which on our context means that even the tzaddikim have to tap into a higher level. They don't give up. They want to help the people, the lost souls who are so far in the category of the bugs and the insects and the worms, but it requires a higher level of siyata deshmaya, of divine intervention beyond prophecy, which is why Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in the shkatzim, and to show that there's halachot there and there's hope to bring them back. That's like the shkatzim. And now, chidush levana, the renewing of the moon, that a person who's black, pitch black, like the moon at the end of the month, right before the renewal of the month, the moon is pitch black. That's the idea, that a person who's pitch black, like in the category of the insects and the bugs, and yet from there begins the light of the waning, of the waxing of the moon. The moon begins the new cycle. And that's when the sages in the Beit Din, like Moshe Rabbeinu, they say, Mekudash, the moon is sanctified now. The sanctification takes place at the first ray of light. It didn't even start yet. It's beginning, the light of the moon is beginning to grow and expand until the 15th of the month, when it's a full moon, right? We would think, sanctify the moon when it's a full moon, when it's on the 15th. No, we sanctify it at the beginning of the month, when it's just like a drop of light. And that's when the Beit Din says Mekudash, meaning that a person in his darkness, the first stage, the first step of trying to come back to Hashem, to start again, he's already called Mekudash. He's already called holy. You earn the title holiness even though you're not there yet. And even though we know after you reach a high, which is like the full moon, you're going to crash again. You're going to go back down to darkness again. Yet, Mekudash, you're sanctified already on that first initial stage and step. These three areas is what Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in. He didn't give up. He knew Hashem wants these laws to exist. He wants the light of the infinite light to shine into this world. He wants there to be laws and regulations for someone who falls so low in the category of a shegitz, shkatzim. He wants there to be laws when starting again to come back, when it's a full black moon and then the beginning of the ray of light. Hashem wants that. And there's laws and ramifications, but even Moshe Rabbeinu needed a higher level of divine intervention above prophecy to learn how to deal with these three and to give them to Am Yisrael. We should be zocheh to always find these tzaddikim who are at the caliber of Moshe Rabbeinu. Like the Zohar says, Itpashtuta de Moshe bechol dara vedara. Moshe Rabbeinu's presence is found in every generation, meaning there are tzaddikim in every generation who are at the caliber of Moshe Rabbeinu. And more than this, the Midrash says, Mordechai, he was the Moshe Rabbeinu incarnate of that generation. The Midrash says that. So we should be zocheh every time, every generation, every time of the year, to look for these tzaddikim who are Moshe Rabbeinu caliber people, who their standing is, have access to levels of Hashem's compassion and light and holiness to shine even for the most difficult cases, the most difficult people, the most difficult scenarios. It's specifically these tzaddikim of Moshe Rabbeinu, because they're mitkasheh, they have difficulty themselves, and they have to tap into a higher level of divine intervention to help and assist in these areas. B'ezrat Hashem. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.